Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling some really fascinating but also quite challenging source material.
Yeah, definitely. We're looking at accounts from non-speaking individuals, the ones who communicate using assisted spelling.
Right. And their experiences, their claims, they consistently suggest a reality that's just, well, fundamentally different, more interconnected than we usually think.
That's the core of it. So our mission here is really to distill this material. We want to focus on, let's say, two major claims that seem to demand really solid corroboration.
Okay, what are those?
First, this idea of information transfer across huge distances, basically verified telepathy, you could say.
Right.
And second, communication that appears to cross the boundary between life and death.
Wow.
And the thing is, this material isn't just anecdotes. It often provides these really specific, sometimes verifiable details that, frankly, force us to look again at what we'd normally label impossible.
Yeah, it feels like the core idea emerging from these sources is that maybe things like, telepathy or knowing things you shouldn't, maybe they aren't superpowers.
Exactly. Perhaps they're just inherent skills for certain people, maybe those less tethered to our everyday sensory world.
It certainly forces you to rethink what's real.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. Where do we start that case of verified distance communication?
Let's do that. We begin with Josiah. His mother, T, lives up in Minnesota.
Okay.
And she reports that Josiah started spelling these incredibly profound messages when he was just 7 years old.
7. And non-speaking before that.
Completely non-speaking. Initially, the messages were very spiritual, lots of wisdom that seemed way beyond his years or any teaching he'd received.
What was the first big one?
His very first independent sentence, and you have to remember the complexity spelling this out, was, "God is a good gift giver."
Wow. But you said there's a pivotal moment for his mother.
Right. It wasn't just the message, it was the source he claimed. Josiah spelled that his deceased auntie, actually his great-aunt, who died at 89 and whom Josiah had never met or even heard discussed,
Okay.
that she told an angel to pass that specific message to him.
That's quite a claim right off the bat.
It is, and what's critical here is the way he communicated. T had an acquaintance, a linguist, look at Josiah's writings.
Wow.
The linguist was struck by it, described it as full of proverbs, poetry, saying it was, and I quote, "unlike any language that I really have ever studied."
So confirmation he had knowledge and vocabulary he wasn't taught in the usual way.
Precisely. Now let's get to the distance part. This is where it gets really compelling.
Okay.
T was working on a book with a collaborator, Cheryl. Cheryl happened to mention an author friend of hers, Max Davis, who lived down in Louisiana.
Thousands of miles away. And a complete stranger to Josiah and T.
Complete stranger. Never met, never spoken. The only link was Cheryl. Moments after Max's name is mentioned, Josiah starts spelling incredibly specific things about Max's life.
Like what kind of things? This is where the verification comes in, right?
Exactly. The rigor matters here. Max was doing some construction on his house at the time. Josiah, back in Minnesota, spelled that Max's house was poppin', poppin', poppin'.
Nail guns.
Pneumatic nail guns, yes. Max confirmed it. Then Josiah spelled, "Are you a barn man, Max?"
Did Max live on a farm?
No, but here's the detail. His house was literally right next door to his in-laws' farm, which had peacocks, other animals, the whole setup. It looked like he lived with a barn.
Okay, that's not general knowledge, that's specific.
Highly specific. And this kind of remote, accurate observation went on for 5 years.
5 years. Max must have been, well, shocked, maybe suspicious.
Understandably. He apparently wondered if Josiah had somehow bugged his house or something.
I would too. Did he test it?
He did. One night, he drove out to this remote spot in the woods, wanted to pray completely alone, made absolutely sure no one saw him, no cameras, nothing.
Okay.
The very next morning, Josiah spells a message basically saying, "Heard your prayers in the woods last night, Max."
Okay, that's unnerving.
But perhaps the most stunning piece of corroboration involved Max's secret writing spot.
Secret how?
It was this little sort of quaint motel on the Gulf of Mexico. Almost nobody knew he went there to write. It was his private sanctuary.
And Josiah knew.
Josiah spelled. Max loves sacred times in his motel. He bans his music for sacred times in motel.
He used the word ban.
Yes. And Max confirmed that ban was the exact specific word he used himself when he curated these playlists just for his intense writing sessions at that motel. He banned them together.
That's uncanny. There's more, isn't there?
One more quick one. Max was stressed, facing a book deadline, felt guilty, and took a short nap instead of writing.
We've all been there.
Right. Josiah's message comes through. Naps are nice, aren't they? Just get the first fruits out. First fruits.
Wait, first fruits?
That was the literal title of the chapter Max was stuck on and feeling guilty about not writing.
No way.
Yes way! And the message continued with this beautiful line. The spirit on your fingers like night braille on the keyboard.
Wow. Just poetic and precise. So how did Max ultimately process all this?
He framed it spiritually. He concluded it wasn't just, raw telepathy. He felt it was, in his words, God using that boy to let me know he sees me. Like validation.
Okay, so he saw a purpose behind the information.
Yeah.
But stepping back, analytically, if there is some kind of accessible information field, as these sources seem to suggest, why jump straight to divine intervention? Couldn't be an incredibly advanced, maybe natural form of communication we just don't understand yet?
That's a fair question. The sources often blend the mechanism with meaning. What seems clear is that this information access isn't random. It often seems targeted, responsive to emotional or spiritual needs.
Which is maybe a bridge to the next big claim. If physical distance isn't a barrier, what about the barrier between life and death?
Exactly. If this field exists, does it also transcend mortality? That leads us to another community, this time in Georgia.
Okay, who are we meeting here?
Houston and his mother, Katie, and their close friends, John Paul, JP, and his mother, Libby. Houston and JP were non-speakers who communicated together.
Together how?
They described this shared mental space they called the Hill.
The Hill.
Yeah, the sources define it as a place they, the non-speakers, go to share thoughts. Access seems to be automatic once you can communicate purely mind-to-mind beyond the physical spelling board.
Okay. A sort of collective consciousness space for them.
Something like that. Tragically, John Paul died very suddenly at age 17 in a hot tub accident.
Oh, how awful.
Truly terrible. And the timing around his passing had some, very strange coincidences.
Like what?
Both mothers, Libby and Katie, and several other non-speakers in their circle reported feeling this sudden, overwhelming urge to take an intense nap that same afternoon, all around the same time.
That is strange. Synchronicity.
Perhaps. Then, Katie woke Houston up later, before she knew the news about J.P. Houston's. Very first spelled message was, John Paul is finally free.
He knew instantly, without being told.
Instantly. And another friend, Zahari, who had been really lethargic the day before for no clear reason, also spelled a message about JP before his own mother had heard the news.
What did Zahari say?
Glad God is faithful to give JP a home. And JP's girlfriend, Lily, she described feeling the exact moment he passed while she was in the shower, said it felt like all worldly cares vanished.
So immediate awareness among his close circle, even before the news officially spread.
Yes. And then came the perspective, apparently, from JP himself, communicated through his friends.
What did they say he said?
They spelled that JP told them he was leaving because, in their words, this world couldn't contain him and sustain his mission.
A sense of purpose beyond this life.
It seems so.
Yeah.
They comforted each other on the hill, this shared space, and they reported slowly realizing that JP was actually still with them, just in a different way.
Still on the hill.
Apparently. Zahari used this specific phrase, writing that a great zebra took place on the hill the day JP went home. Some kind of significant event or shift in that shared reality.
Okay. Did they describe seeing him?
They did, and consistently. They said he looked ginormous, like 10 feet tall.
10 feet tall.
That was the report. And surrounded by children. The sense was he was now in charge of children who hadn't had a voice on Earth.
Interesting.
He was also apparently busy building himself a cabin by the sea in this other realm.
Cabin by the sea. Okay, these are incredible claims. But they're all from within that close-knit, non-speaking community, right?
Yeah.
Is there any outside corroboration?
That's the crucial question for giving this intellectual weight. And yes, there is. This is where Becky comes in.
Who's Becky?
Becky is an Air Force veteran. She had a massive stroke during her recovery, and she actually died for 3 minutes, had a near-death experience, an NDE.
Okay.
And she describes this experience as leaving the door to heaven open for her afterwards.
What does it mean practically?
She developed this extraordinary ability. She said she can physically feel how a person passed away when their spirit visits her, and she receives highly specific messages to relay. There's one famous story where a message she delivered stopped a stranger from taking his own life.
So she's like a conduit for very specific, verifiable information from the other side.
That's how the source material frames it, and it connects to theories like Dr. Powell's idea that severe trauma might sometimes bypass the brain's usual filters, unlocking latent abilities.
Okay, so how does Becky connect to John Paul?
Critically, Becky provides timeline confirmation, a full week before JP actually died.
A week before.
Yes. Becky reported seeing him, describing him as an incredibly tall, non-speaking boy walking with her own deceased great-uncle, who she calls her person in heaven.
She saw JP in this other realm with her relative before he even passed.
That's her testimony. She said her uncle having his pocket watch out was her signal that someone's transition was imminent.
Wow. Okay. And did she have contact after he passed?
Yes. She reported that JP communicated directly to her. He confirmed his passing was a choice.
A choice, not an accident.
That's what he reportedly conveyed. And that he passed with no pain and did not drown. He said he was busy saying goodbye to his friends on the hill and to his mother, Libby.
That must have been incredibly comforting for Libby, if she believed Becky.
Immensely. Becky shared another powerful detail with Libby. She said when Libby was lying on the ground with JP right after the accident,
Yes.
Becky saw generations of family surrounding Libby, trying to comfort her, including Libby's deceased father and stepfather standing there together.
Together, even if they had issues in life.
Exactly. Becky's message was, in that realm, your ego goes, it's just love.
That's profound.
Yeah.
This external account really does seem to echo what the non-speakers themselves were reporting.
It aligns very consistently. The dissolving of physical limits, earthly conflicts, the persistence of consciousness and love.
Okay, so we have distance communication, and we have communication across death, both with corroborating details. This sets us up for the final piece, right? What does this all suggest about knowledge, reality, maybe even time itself?
Precisely. A common thread across many of these sources is the non-speakers talking about accessing other realms for learning. They call them heaven, the realms, sometimes school at night.
School at night, like dream learning.
Maybe more vivid than that. Josiah described taking classes with, quote, the most brilliant minds that ever lived.
Wow. Any other examples?
Houston gave a fascinating description of his learning method. He said he learned by metaphorically wearing the hats of famous writers.
Wearing their hats.
Yeah, like Twain, Steinbeck, Fitzgerald. He claimed that by doing this, he could somehow access their knowledge, quote their work, even synthesize their styles. He quoted Gatsby's line, "Love really hates when we choose money."
So, accessing a repository of knowledge directly.
It seems that way. And what's really interesting is what gets prioritized in this school.
What do you mean?
When these individuals, who were often trapped in silence, gain access to this vast knowledge, the focus consistently reported is on literature, art, philosophy, things reflecting the wholeness of humanity.
Not just science or tech.
Those might be there, but the emphasis reported is on the humanities, on human creative and intellectual output. It suggests this. Knowledge field values and preserves that kind of creation.
That's a really interesting observation. How does time fit into this?
It seems to be completely different. Houston, when asked about prophecy, simply spelled that time is happening all at the very same time.
All at once. No linear progression.
Apparently not from that perspective. And Asher, a non-speaker over in the UK, said something similar about reincarnation.
What did he say?
That all our lives are essentially all happening at once. And learning something new in one life can actually have repercussions in other lives because they're all interconnected.
Okay, my head is spinning a little now. Non-linear time, interconnected lives. How do we even begin to frame this scientifically?
Well, we mentioned Dr. Powell before. He finds simulation theory a useful, though imperfect, analogy.
Simulation theory. Like we're in the Matrix.
Sort of. The idea is our physical bodies are like our avatar within a created simulation or experience. Our senses limit us to the game.
And the non-speakers.
Powell theorized they might be less deeply immersed in the simulation. Perhaps because of neurological differences, the brain's normal filtering mechanism, which keeps us focused on physical reality, is reduced.
So they have more access to the code or the underlying reality.
That's the idea. Access to the greater reality, the base reality of pure consciousness or information. This informational field could potentially explain both the psychic phenomena and the spiritual elements, the angels, spirits, maybe even co-creation, like JP manifesting his specific cabin.
It offers a way to bridge the scientific and, well, spiritual-sounding aspects of these accounts.
It attempts to, yes. It treats the non-speakers' reports as valuable field reports from that base reality, which leads back to Asher's advice for experts doubting this.
What was that again?
To broaden their perception, And importantly, adopt a humble and wondering attitude. Because, as he put it, our instruments cannot measure all that is taking place in and beyond our reality.
A call for intellectual humility in the face of the unknown.
Exactly, and that humility feels earned when you see the startling consistency across these accounts. Minnesota, Georgia, the UK. They all paint a picture that profoundly challenges our standard, linear, material view of life.
Yeah. Libby, John Paul's mother, she summed up that feeling of loss, but also continuation, saying our bodies are just a casing.
Hmm.
And when we die, it's just the energy goes, it transforms, moves on.
And the power in these accounts is that the non-peoples aren't just theorizing about this. They seem to know it from direct experience.
Right. It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually tasting the food.
That's a great analogy. They seem to have tasted it. They report knowing that time is perhaps an illusion, that dimensions overlap, that consciousness isn't confined to the body and survives death.
That experiential certainty, not just belief or philosophy, is what makes this material so compelling and maybe so challenging.
It demands a critical look,
Yeah.
definitely, a potential shift in how we even approach studying reality.
So to leave our listeners with something to chew on,
Mm.
if these other realms, this base reality they describe, if it truly celebrates and preserves the great works of human creativity, the literature, the art, the big ideas generated here,
Mm-hmm.
what does that suggest about the ultimate, maybe eternal, value of what we choose to create and prioritize during this lifetime in this physical reality?
That's the question, isn't it? What really matters in the grand scheme of things if this perspective holds true?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always fascinating. Thank you.